Welcome back to our studios here in Lahore. I'm Hamza Amjad, and let's begin the bulletin with India, which is celebrating its Independence Day today after usurping the right of independence of the people of Kashmir. Pakistanis and Kashmiris are observing the day as a Black Day and staging protest rallies across the world to reject India's illegal annexation of Kashmir. More in this report.
On August 4th, 13 million Kashmiris woke up to find themselves held hostage in their own homes. A million Indian troops had imposed a crushing curfew and total communication blackout over the valley. With occupied Kashmir cut off from the world, India announced the annexation of the UN-recognized disputed territory on August 5th. Kashmiris say they're victims of brute force.
We do not have any freedom or anything. We have been suppressed with the use of brute force.
As India marks its Independence Day on August 15th, Pakistanis are demonstrating against Indian aggression.
We're marking this day as Black Day, as India has suppressed the rights and autonomy of all sects, nationalities, and minorities. 10 days before its Independence Day, it has suppressed the special rights of our Kashmiri brethren. Hence, India's Day of Independence is a Black Day for all humanity.
In the UK, British, Pakistani and Kashmiri community held a massive demonstration outside the Parliament in London. In Japan, the Pakistani diaspora held protests and rallies outside the Indian High Commission.
Japan's Pakistani community and members of all political parties have gathered here in Tokyo today to raise voice against Indian oppression. We have let go of our differences to give a fitting response to Indian aggression in the occupied valley. We stand with Kashmiris across the world, and in their plight, we are making the Black Day with tenacity.
Expressing solidarity with Kashmiris, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan and people across the country have turned their social media display photos black.
Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has decided to discuss India's unilateral revocation of occupied Kashmir's UN-recognized status as a disputed territory. Now, this comes after Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi wrote a letter to the UNSC calling for an emergency meeting over the issue. Talking to reporters, UN Security Council President Joanna Roneka said the meeting will be held on Friday. Earlier, China backed Pakistan's call for the Security Council moot to discuss India's illegal move. Russia's acting UN envoy Dmitry Polyansky said Moscow supports Pakistan's request for emergency session. And international media has slammed India over its hypocrisy of celebrating Independence Day while usurping occupied Kashmir's freedom. This comes after the Indian government unilaterally revoked Kashmir's UN-recognized status as a disputed territory. French television network France 24 wrote that India marks its Independence Day with its secular post-colonial image in tatters. British newspaper The Independent said intensifying the crackdown, Indian forces have arrested 1,300 Kashmiris in the last 11 days. And in its opinion piece, The Guardian wrote India's illegal power grab is turning Kashmir into a colony. American newspaper Washington Post said occupied Kashmir's streets are quiet, but the valley is a dormant volcano. At least 14 people have been killed after rebels mounted a series of attacks in Myanmar. One of the 5 attacks targeted a defense service technology academy where military engineers are trained. Most of those killed are members of the security forces. The Myanmar military says rebels fired 107mm rockets at the academy from a nearby hillside. The Northern Alliance of armed groups in the region has claimed responsibility for the attacks. The rebels say they have acted in retaliation to the military's operations in their areas. 16 fighters have been killed in Syria as government forces advance further into a string of rebel-held villages in southern Idlib. The Syrian War Observatory says government forces are only 3 kilometers away from the key town of Khan Sheikhoun. The observatory said 5 government soldiers and 11 rebels are among those killed in the clashes. Earlier, rebels shot down a Syrian government warplane in the northern province of Idlib. War monitors said the pilot who ejected from a Russian-made warplane was captured by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham rebel group. The country's government officials later confirmed the incident. Well, Turkey has started its reconnaissance missions in northern Syria as part of a recent safe zone agreement with the US. The Turkish Defense Ministry said drones are surveying the area where a safe zone for the return of refugees is to be created. Ankara said efforts are underway to set up a joint operations center in the country's southeastern province of Şanlıurfa. The statement has not yet provided further information on the drone's operations. The US and Turkey reached an agreement on August the 7th over Ankara's security concerns along its southern border. Yemen's southern separatists have rejected the Saudi-led coalition's demand of withdrawal from Aden city before truce talks. The Saudi-led coalition and separatists have locked horns over the control of Aden. The coalition has withdrawn its earlier offer, asking the separatists to retreat from the Yemeni government's seat of power. Foreign Minister Mohammed Al-Hadrami called on the Southern Council to hand over arms to the government of exiled President Mansour Hadi. The separatists effectively took over the port city on the weekend by seizing government military bases. The Southern Transitional Council spokesperson Saleh Al-Noud demanded that rebels be removed from positions of power in the south. Now, the US Justice Department has applied to seize an Iranian oil tanker hours before Gibraltar was poised to release it. The Iranian vessel was detained by British forces on July the 4th under allegations of smuggling oil to Syria. The Gibraltar government has halted the release of the vessel, saying it is now considering Washington's application. The country's Attorney General office said the government was not expecting any such application from the US. Meanwhile, the captain and 3 officers of the Grace 1 have been released. US President Donald Trump has tied a trade deal with China for a humane resolution of protests in Hong Kong. Asking China's President Xi Jinping for a one-on-one meeting, President Trump said Xi can quickly solve the issue if he wants. The US President said his Chinese counterpart is a great leader who has the respect of his people. Trump said positive developments were made during telephonic conversations between US and China's trade negotiators. He predicted that Beijing will reciprocate Washington's recent decision to delay the imposition of additional trade tariffs on China. Trump said the trade war between both countries was hurting China way more compared to the US. Meanwhile, China has called for countermeasures to latest US tariffs that violates a consensus reached by the leaders of the two countries. In another development, Chinese ambassador to Britain, Liu Xiaoming, has told foreign forces to stop intervening in Hong Kong's affairs. And meanwhile, in Hong Kong, police have fired tear gas at protesters who gathered outside a police station in the residential area of Sham Shui Po. The protesters were shining laser beams at the police station and burning the papers of Chinese religious idol Joss on the roadside. The demonstration, titled as a religious laser light vigil, was organized by activists to mock police warnings. Earlier, Hong Kong police officials announced enforcing laws against illegal violence. Police have arrested 5 people on suspicion of illegally assembling, attacking police, and holding aggressive weapons. Increasingly violent protests have plunged the Asian financial hub into its most serious political crisis in decades. South Korea's President Moon Jae-in says he is ready for dialogue with Japan to end the trade dispute. Tensions between the two countries have soared recently, culminating in their withdrawal of each other's preferential trade status. In a Liberation Day address, Moon accused Japan of weaponizing trade to target South Korea's export-dependent economy. The Korean president said the two countries should overcome the past and move towards the future together. Moon's overture came as South Korea celebrates its 74th Independence Day from Japanese colonial rule today. Tens of thousands of South Koreans will take part in anti-Japan protests later in the day. The trade dispute was triggered when a South Korean court ordered Japanese firms to compensate forced laborers. In the UK, the opposition Labour Party says it will soon call a vote of no confidence against Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Now, if successful, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn plans to lead a caretaker government that would delay Brexit and call a snap election. In a letter, Corbyn asked other opposition parties and Tory rebels to install him as interim Prime Minister.
They will all support the motion of no confidence that I will put, and that will ensure that this government then cannot continue with this headlong pursuit of a no-deal Brexit, and that would mean a caretaker government led by Labour.
Meanwhile, former Conservative MP Sarah Wollaston has joined the Liberal Democrats. She dubbed it the best way for her to fight for the UK to remain in the EU. Moving on, Italy says Spain has offered to take some of the migrants from the Spanish rescue vessel. Earlier, a court in Rome ruled the ship carrying 147 migrants will be allowed to enter Italian waters. The court said humanitarian conditions aboard the vessel permitted its crew to take migrants to safety. The court ruling did not say whether the ship was allowed to dock in Italy and disembark its passengers. The vessel was anchored 5 miles off Lampedusa, hoping to get medical evacuation for those on board. However, Italy's far-right Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini has vowed to stop the ship. Salvini said he would appeal against the court ruling. French President Emmanuel Macron has marked the 75th anniversary of the Allied invasion of Provence in World War II. Flanked by his Ivorian and Guinean counterparts, Alassane Ouattara and Alpha Condé, Macron paid homage to African veterans. The ceremony took place at a military cemetery in Saint Raphael. It holds the remains of 464 soldiers who were killed during the invasion of Provence. Operation Dragoon took place in 1944, 2 months after the Allied invasion of Normandy. African troops in particular paid a heavy price, with 55,000 killed over the course of World War II. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has asked the EU for more help in fighting wildfires. The blaze has razed tracts of pine forest on the Evia Island as authorities declared a state of emergency. Over 227 firefighters along with 6 helicopters and 6 aircrafts are battling the fire. Local villages have been evacuated and an appeal for help has been made from Greece's European neighbours. Mitsotakis said the effects of climate change call for a better rescue mechanism across the European Union.
We know that wildfires will be with us. They will be part of our, as they've always been, but they've been more part of our daily life as climate change is taking its toll on southern Europe, and that is why it is imperative at the European level to strengthen the rescue mechanism in order to have more coordination at the European level to fight incidents like the one we had in Greece.
Now, a Norwegian government delegation has arrived in Venezuela to restart talks between the opposition and the government. Opposition leader Juan Guaido said no specific date and time has yet been planned for the negotiations. Talks to resolve the country's political crisis were halted last week after President Nicolas Maduro's allies pulled out. Maduro also refused a scheduled round of talks in Barbados to protest the opposition's support for new US sanctions against his government. The Norway-backed talks began in May following a failed uprising against Maduro, but have not yet yielded any official results. Now, a coalition of 13 US states have sued President Donald Trump's administration over a new immigration rule. The legislation drastically reduces legal immigration by denying visas to poor migrants. The rule, unveiled on Monday and to take effect from October the 15th, expands the definition of a public charge. It allows denials to visa applicants who fail to meet income requirements or who receive public assistance. Experts say the rule could cut legal immigration in half and could be the most drastic anti-immigration policy yet. Let's head over to India now. The monsoon death toll has risen to 270 people. 105 people have been killed and 50 are missing in Kerala alone. 2 weeks of heavy monsoon rains have left 1 million people displaced and thousands of homes destroyed across 6 states. The Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra and Gujarat states are among the hardest hit by floods. Heavy rainfall triggered dozens of landslides in Kerala. Nearly 0.2 million people are still living in relief camps. More heavy rainfall is expected in the next 2 days in parts of Karnataka, Maharashtra and Gujarat. New Zealand says it made a mistake by allowing the Christchurch attacker to send letters from a prison cell. This comes after a letter written by terrorist Brenton Tarrant circulated online. The letter was full of Islamophobia and white supremacist hate speech. Tarrant killed 51 Muslims at 2 mosques in Christchurch on March the 15th. Prisons Minister Kelvin Davis said the New Zealand's laws allow prisoners to send and receive mail. He said Tarrant sent 9 letters from prison so far, 2 to his mother and 5 to unidentified recipients. But Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said the gunman should never have been allowed to send any letters from prison.
No one wants extra trauma for the victims, extra trauma for Christchurch, and ultimately no one wants this alleged offender to be able to spread his message of hate in the way that he's being able to. Now we have to make sure that we just do everything we can to prevent this kind of thing happening again.
Now, every year in Togo, the sea nibbles away more than 2 meters of coastline and up to 10 meters in some parts of the coast. Coastal erosion affects all of West Africa and is distorting Togo's landscape, driving out fishing communities. Take a look.
On Togo's coast, just east of the capital Lomé, villagers are feeling the devastation of sea level rise. Only the remains of this fishing village are left standing. Kojo and his family had to leave their fisherman's cabin when the water began to rise.
The house, everything, there's nothing left. We're here suffering. We are suffering. I don't know where we're going to be able to stay right now.
The sea reclaims up to 10 meters of land on this coast every year. Entire communities have been forced to flee. In Bagida, 500 people made a living from fishing. They have not received any government assistance to relocate or rebuild. A glance towards the horizon reveals a likely culprit for the coastal erosion, the constant stream of gigantic cargo ships in and out of the port of Lomé. Locals allege that after the port's construction in 1967, the sea level began to rise.
Climate change, with its warming effect on the planet due to melting glaciers and rising seawater temperatures, is an aggravating factor in coastal erosion.
In all, 3,000 people have been displaced by the rising sea level. Several hundred others are awaiting their fate, anxiously watching the waters.
Now, Kenya's Environment Court has blocked the construction of a coal-fired power station on the country's Indian Ocean coast. The fossil fuel project is the first of its kind in Eastern Africa.
Every day, Thabit and Ali go fishing. They both come from families who have relied on the sea for generations. It is their livelihood, but they are concerned about the future, now that their archipelago is threatened by a coal-fired power plant project.
The disaster is going to come from that coal plant, is going to reach up to Nairobi. So just imagine about the Lamu of people, you know. So many people will believe they're going to have problem with their health, like cancer disease, you know.
In June, those objecting to the development won a huge victory. The National Environmental Court had ordered to stop the controversial project.
We didn't think it would happen. We saw that the government is very fair. We're very happy.
But it's not a done deal. An appeal to proceed with constructing the power plant can still be made, and the Kenyan government can override any final decisions. The coal-fired power plant is part of a much larger development project that includes the construction of a port, roads and pipelines to develop the northeastern part of the country. Residents are concerned such developments will disrupt the delicate ecosystem, as well as contribute to a decrease in tourism, which is still fragile after an Englishwoman was kidnapped and her husband murdered in 2011.
Tourists, most of them, they won't come Lamu as they used to come, will be like few years back.
The Lamu archipelago is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, renowned for its Swahili architecture, beautiful beaches and mangroves. Following the initial decision in June barring any construction, developers were ordered by the court to carry out a fresh environmental impact assessment, the results of which is still pending.
Well, rooftop farming is taking off in the Big Apple. This is thanks to the efforts of a company named Brooklyn Grange, which has 3 rooftop farms in the city. The newest one lies on top of an 8-story building spanning 55,000 square feet out of a 140,000 square foot rooftop. See how they do it.
Brooklyn Grange made its debut in 2010 with a rooftop farm in Long Island. The concept was meant to maximize locally grown produce and put rainwater that would be wasted to good use.
The purpose of the farm is to grow as much food as we can. It's to manage millions of gallons of stormwater, to create an example of what we can do with our ecosystem to continue to make our cities as livable as possible going into the future.
Their latest farm is sandwiched between views of the Statue of Liberty and the Empire State Building in Sunset Park. The farm grows a wide variety of vegetables, including tomatoes, leafy greens, peppers, and eggplants.
This is 140,000 square feet, and it's our largest farm so far. It's our third farm that we've done in about 10 years. And we have about an acre and a half, about 60,000 square feet of outdoor growing area. We have a 5,000 square foot greenhouse, and we're also building a large event space.
New York City officials say rooftop farming and other green practices could save the city government $2.4 billion in over 20 years. Brooklyn Grange co-founder Ben Flanner says he hopes the trend will take off in other cities as well.
Well, first up in business, European stock markets have opened flat after steep dives in the US and UK bond yields heightened fears of a global recession. London's FTSE 100 is down 0.25% in early trading. Other European indices are marginally higher in hopes that central banks will act to boost growth. Asian stock markets closed mixed after taking an early pounding on investor worries of a worldwide downturn. First up in sports, let's take a look at the UEFA Super Cup, which Liverpool has won after beating fellow Premier League side Chelsea on penalties. In a seesaw battle in Istanbul, Chelsea took the lead in the first half by French striker Olivier Giroud. Liverpool forward Sadio Mane equalised in the second half and put the Reds ahead in extra time, but Chelsea hit back through midfielder Jorginho. In the ensuing penalty shootout, goalkeeper Adrian blocked the final Chelsea attempt to win the title for Liverpool. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp was ecstatic over the victory. Well, it's 33 degrees Celsius here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. And that was all I had from the news bulletin at the moment, but do stay tuned to Indus News for further updates. And as always, thanks for watching.